Hey, everybody. It's a Monday edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, November the 21st, 2022. And yes, the Browns have lost again to fall to 3-7. We'll talk about their loss to the Bills. We'll start looking ahead a little bit. Buckeyes in Michigan, but more during the week. And the Cavs go 2-0 over the weekend after almost blowing the game big time on Friday night. We'll get into all of that. Today's edition of the Bullpen is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. And where this podcast starts is with the Browns losing to the Bills next.
Podcast is not for the faint of heart.
And I do think it's time for the Browns to move on.
It's not for those who ride the fence.
He's proven nothing.
But if you're looking for someone who tells it like it is about Cleveland sports,
everybody does fandom their way.
You've come to the right place.
I don't think he's any good.
It's time for the Bullpen with Adam the Bull.
And yes, indeed, the Browns fall to 3-7, losing yesterday to the Buffalo Bills, 31-23. The final. Browns, as has been the case a number of times this year, got off to a good start. Looked great on their opening drive. Didn't do much offensively until the game was pretty much out of hand in the fourth quarter. And the defense did what it usually does. Plays okay in the first quarter and terrible the rest of the way. Browns defense giving up 28 points in the final three quarters of the game and took what was a 10-3 lead early and lose 31-23. Browns getting the touchdown to make it to cover, I guess depending on what you ended up having the line at in the final minute. You know, they did have a chance with that onside kick. They really did. But the Bills were in control for much of the second half before the Browns kind of got going in somewhat garbage time late. Jacoby Brissett played a really good game for the Browns in this loss. He was 28 of 41, 324 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. But when the game was really in doubt in the middle of the game, there were too many drives where the Browns couldn't get anything going. Nick Chubb had a terrible day on the ground. He had 14 carries for 19 yards. Browns, Chubb and Hunt, even though they were down, from obviously halftime on, carried the ball 19 times between them for a total of 51 yards. And if you throw in Jacoby, they ran it 26 times, and Jacoby had one nice run of 22 yards. And what's amazing is Nick Chubb had a 12-yard run, and then his other 13 carries, he had 7 total yards. There was no push up front, especially once the game got going. The Browns got dominated at the line of scrimmage both ways, really. It was weird because early in the game it looked like the Browns were doing well on both sides of the ball in the trenches, and then from like the middle of the second quarter on, it was all Buffalo. The game just flipped, and once again, you look at some of these great quarterbacks the Browns have played against. Justin Herbert didn't have a huge game against them, but the Chargers ran a ton in that one. Obviously, Joe Burrow had a terrible game against the Browns. He didn't do anything, and the Bengals didn't run it either. And then this game against Buffalo, Josh Allen was not particularly good, didn't throw for 200 yards, didn't get much going in the passing game until the second half. It certainly wasn't a marquee game for him. And yet it was enough because even a Bills team like the Bengals, like the Chargers, Bengals case, they didn't run the ball. But like the Chargers did, the Bills are a pass-first team. Maybe more than any team in the NFL. I wonder if they throw the ball at a higher percentage than any other team. I didn't even look at that. But if they're not number one, then they're certainly close to it. Actually, not as high as I thought. The Bills are 21st in terms of running play percentage. I would have guessed they were last, but certainly not the case. They throw the ball 60. Although that's kind of misleading because Josh Allen does run the ball a lot. And if you look at some of the teams below them, a lot of those teams do not have running quarterbacks. Tampa Bay actually runs it the least, and they don't have a running quarterback either. But Buffalo obviously still is a pass-heavy team, and they ran the ball, and they ran it effectively. Their two backs, Josh Allen didn't even really do anything. He usually does a lot of running for them. He only ran 3 times and did nothing. But their two backs who got most of the carries, Nyheim Hines took one big loss. But Devin Singletary and James Cook, the rookie, combined 29 carries for 172 yards, which is that's over 6 yards a carry. So very impressive on the ground. They didn't do it early, then they got it going, and both guys looked good. There were some big chunk plays. And unfortunately, once again, the Browns lose, and they're in a situation where they've got one more game with Jacoby Brissett before Deshaun Watson comes back. We all hoped the Browns could be 6-5 when Deshaun Watson came back. I think we would have all signed for 5-6. But now the best case scenario is that they're 4-7 when he comes back. And that's to just get to that, they've got to beat Tampa Bay. And, let me see what the line is. They have a line. The Browns are a 3-point dog against the Buccaneers in Cleveland. Buccaneers coming off a bye. Tom Brady usually good off a bye. Last 5 quarters of football, the Bucs have looked a little better. I mean, I still don't buy that they're that good right now, but they've looked a lot better in the last 5 quarters. So anyway, but going back to yesterday again, it was 2 games in a row. The Browns have played poorly across the board. Outside of the passing game, Jacoby Brissett, as I mentioned, a good game, but a lot of those numbers did come when the game was kind of one-sided, out of hand. They couldn't run the ball, as we talked about. Even with the Jacoby Brissett 22-yard run, they still averaged just over 3 yards per carry. Amari Cooper had a big game, caught 8 of 12 passes for 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. Donovan Peoples-Jones, 5 of 6 for 61 yards, and he scored that touchdown that made it an 8-point game, his first touchdown of the year. And Nick Chubb, who didn't get anything going on the ground, actually had 48 yards receiving, another 41 for Harrison Bryant. But a couple big plays in the first half, and in the half the Browns played well for the most part. Harrison Bryant and Pharaoh Brown both both had drops in the red zone. The Browns were up 7-3. Both had drops. Pharaoh Brown's would have been a definite touchdown. Harrison Bryant's, that would have been a touchdown too. So they dropped. They have to settle for a field goal, 2 drops. Those were big. Obviously the Jacoby Brissett fumble was big. And then the play, Grant Delpit, who did a lot of talking after the game about how the defense is basically lost. There was a big play, 3rd and 12 in the first half. Browns defense had been playing well to that point. They Josh Allen throws a dump off to Dawson Knox. And Grant Delpit had a chance to tackle him in the open field. And it would have been 4th down, and he misses the tackle. And that was a killer. Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, those guys didn't have huge games. Stephon Diggs, he got the touchdown. He was wide open. But you hold Stephon Diggs 4 catches, 48 yards. That's a job well done. But the tight end had a big game. And the running backs, guys you don't expect, Devin Singletary, James Cook, and Dawson Knox had big games for Buffalo. They kind of led the way in this one. The Bills found a way to win differently, and the Browns couldn't. And again, the passing game, good. They did a nice job in the passing game. But it was even that, it's still misleading. I don't think Jacoby Brissett played as well as those numbers, because in the middle of the game, when it was still a competition, that they weren't moving the chains. That's the bottom line. Not consistently enough in the second quarter, in the red zone, in the third quarter. Now, it wasn't all his fault, because as I mentioned, both Bryant and Pharaoh Brown dropped what should have been touchdowns in that first half. And you can't have that. The Browns can't afford those mistakes. We've seen that a lot this year. Drops, the bad penalty on Amari Cooper on the offensive pass interference against Baltimore. The Browns have missed some great opportunities, and it's turned some potential wins into losses. Now, I don't know. They make those catches, and they're up 14-3. Did the Browns beat Buffalo? They still might have lost. We'll never know. But against the Bills, when you have a chance to score a touchdown with their offense as good as it is, you got to take advantage of that. And it could have been 14-3 instead of 10-3 is potentially a big difference. And the Browns, often people like to say, well, when you pass on a chance for a field goal, you You left some points on the table. Well, the Browns didn't pass on a chance for a field goal. They went for it. They got it, or a first down, and then they had a chance to score a touchdown. They couldn't do it. They end up kicking the field goal. To me, that's leaving 4 points on the table. And then later in the game, they go for it on the fourth and one play with Jacoby Brissett after they ran it up the middle. They ran it up the middle again on fourth down. Didn't work. So they turn it over on downs. Then they get the ball back. Next time they decide to kick the field goal, and it's no good from Cade York. And Stefanski today said it was not on the blocking. It was a bad trajectory. York needs some improvement. I think he's fine. I think he's going to be a good kicker for them, but there's improvement that needs to be made. Most young kickers take some time, and there's very little patience, but he's going to take some time. He's been good, but not elite. So he obviously has great moments against Carolina, but since then it's been a little more up and down. And he's got obviously some things to work on. All right, take a look at some other stuff from the weekend in the NFL. Some more on the Browns. We look ahead to Tampa. Where do we go from here? All of that coming up. BetOnline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Browns lose other division games. Baltimore beats Carolina in what was an ugly game. Baker Mayfield, not a surprise, was absolutely atrocious. Baker having a miserable season in Carolina. His team is 3-8. And he was horrible in this game. They couldn't move the ball at all. 21 of 33, 196 yards, no touchdowns, 2 picks. I mean, that is a pitiful performance. They couldn't run the ball either. Baker may lose his job again. He's already been benched once. Might be benched again, this time for Sam Darnold. We'll see. No announcement on who their starting quarterback's going to be. So the Browns. So obviously you don't get any help with the Panthers, not the expected against the Ravens. And the Ravens are very likely going to win the division. They're up a game on the Bengals. They've got the tiebreaker. They've got a far easier schedule. I'll be stunned if the Ravens might go 12-5, even 13-4. You look at their schedule. The Ravens, the rest of the season, play only one team that's over 500. Whereas the Bengals only play one team that's under 500. Ravens are at the Jaguars this week. Then Broncos at home. At the Steelers, at the Browns, Falcons at home, Steelers at home, at the Bengals. That is a pretty favorable schedule for Baltimore. They're going to win a lot of games, and they're going to win the division, most likely. As for the other division game, Bengals beat the Steelers 37-30. It was a wild game there where Bengals took command in the second half. Steelers did have a chance with an onside kick to try to get the ball, but unlike the Browns situation where they really had a real opportunity to get that onside kick, and they couldn't corral it. They had it. What's his name? Oh, my God. I've drawn a blank. The safety, the veteran safety. Everybody's screaming it probably right now. Browns safeties. Why can I not think of his name? They got him from Jacksonville. His name is not coming into my head. What is happening to me? I'm losing my mind. I know you know who it is. And, of course, it's Ronnie Harrison. Oh, man, what the hell's wrong with me? Yeah, he had a great chance to recover the onside kick. Steelers tried an onside kick after they scored a touchdown in the final minute against the Bengals to make it a 37-30 game. Bengals recovered. That was a wild game. Both teams scored in each quarter. Steelers defense looked really good in the third quarter, but not great the rest of the way. Burrow had a big game there, 4 touchdowns, 3 to Samaje Perine, of all people. And T. Higgins, who had no catches in the first quarter, finishes with 9 for 148. So the standings in the North, if you still care, I don't know. You got the Ravens at 7-3, the Bengals at 6-4, and the Browns and Steelers tied at 3-7. Steelers, by the way, have the worst point differential in the AFC, even worse than the Texans. They might be the worst in the NFL. It is. Steelers with the worst point differential in the NFL, -74. Playoff picture right now. Chiefs won last night, beat the Chargers to get to 8-2. They're the 1 seed right now. Dolphins would be the AFC East champs. All 4 teams in that division over 500. They're the 2 seed at 7-3. Titans would be the South champs. They're the 3 seed at 7-3. Ravens would be the North champs. They're the 4 seed at 7-3. Bills lose the tiebreaker to the Dolphins right now, so they're a wild card team. They'd be 5th at 7-3. Patriots 6-4 would be the 6 seed. Bengals at 6-4 would be the 7 seed. And then you got the Jets at 6-4. So 8 teams over 500. The Chargers at 5-5. Colts next at 4-6. Then the Jags, Raiders, Browns, Broncos, and Steelers all with 3 wins. The Texans with 1. Everybody's got at least 3 wins, except for the Texans, who are 1-8-1 on the season. They are hideous. So that's the playoff picture there. Getting back to the Browns. Listen, there's just not much good I could say about this game. They lost. You put it in the rear view. They have I think I saw a 2.4% chance to make the playoffs. To do that, they'd have to win their final 7 games. They'll have to beat Tampa Bay, and Browns could win all the rest of their games and still not make the playoffs. I think they'd probably make it if they won all 7, but I understand how laughable it is, the idea of the Browns winning 7 in a row. Now, they're only playing in their final 7 3 teams over 500, the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Buccaneers, but so the other 4 games are winnable, but I mean, at this point, I think 7-10 is probably, maybe 8-9 is the best you could hope for, and that's probably pushing it. In terms of looking ahead a little bit to the game with the Buccaneers this week, like I said, Tom Brady's been a little better lately, but they're not that good a team. They're coming off a bye that's a big advantage. It wasn't for the Browns. I don't think Tampa Bay's very good. They got issues on their offensive line. They can't run the ball at all. I was just thinking the Bills didn't run that much. The Buccaneers run at the least. So that might be, this week you'd think that the Browns could play serviceable run defense, but it's hard to believe they can do that against anyone. Chargers run at the second least. And, but at least they got a good back. Leonard Fournette's been terrible for Tampa. They've been going with the rookie Rashad White. They'll probably use him a little more. But, they run the ball less than 34% of the time, which is, like I said, 32nd in the National Football League. So that's the hope that you hang in there, because they're not a running team and they haven't run the ball effectively. But at this point, it's really hard to believe that have any faith in the Browns' run defense against anybody. No matter how bad it is, no matter how little they run. We know the Bills don't run a ton. They haven't been overly effective, and they were great. So the Chargers run less than anybody except for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Eckler's a really good back. They just use him a lot in the passing game, and they don't have good depth at running back. So it is what it is. For the rest of the season, it's all about Deshaun Watson. I mean, let's face it. The team's not going to the playoffs. We can say whatever we want, talk about 2%. We're all realistic, I think. Most of us are. We know the Browns are not getting to 10 wins. We know that even if they did, they wouldn't be a guarantee to make the playoffs. It's all about Deshaun Watson. Coach Stefanski may be fighting for his job. I've consistently said I would not fire Kevin Stefanski, but it's getting harder and harder to defend him each week at 3-7. I mean, I picked the Browns to go 8-9 once I knew the Watson suspension, so I didn't expect them to be great. But I didn't expect them to be this bad. Although, again, it's the defense has been the main reason why they've been bad. The offense has been fine to better than that. The defense has been hideous. I think Kevin Stefanski's maybe my biggest criticism of him, and there's plenty. Listen, he didn't have the team prepared to go after the bye. That's clear. There's plenty of things you can question, but I think the biggest strike against him is that Joe Woods still has a job. Joe Woods clearly should have been fired by now. It's silly to think it's all Joe Woods' fault. The players got to take some blame. The GM's got to take some blame for not getting enough talent, getting it wrong. Like, they have basically every addition they've made in the front 7 has failed. Every one. Now, JOK will still hope there's some potential there. I think there still might be. And Anthony Walker was one positive addition, and he got hurt. But outside of that, I mean, and with JOK, it's just being hopeful. Clowney's been a huge disappointment. They've added defensive tackles. None of them have been any good. The rest of the linebackers haven't been any good. They have failed miserably in finding talent in the front seven. Miserably. The Browns' front seven is awful. It needs a complete overhaul this offseason, and it's tricky because they're spending a ton of money on their offensive line, on their quarterback, on Myles Garrett, on Denzel Ward. So, even Nick Chubb to some degree, Amari Cooper. I mean, you're spending a lot of money on, for once the Browns are not going to be in a great cap situation next year. And so it's going to be hard to remake that defense. You're going to have to do it with a lot of young players. They don't have a first-round pick. They got the rest of their picks. But, it's hard to have a lot of faith in this front office getting it right there. Now, they've done some other things well, but when it comes to the front seven, they've just gotten it wrong time and time again. So it's hard to have a lot of faith. But the rest of the season, we'll see what the toughness of this team is. Do they have any real leaders on the defense? I don't know if they do. They seem to have no tough guys, badass guys on the defense with a little nastiness. I think that's missing. But on the offensive side of the ball, unfortunately now you've lost another starter, Ethan Pocic. He's going to be out a couple of weeks, so it's the offensive line has not played as well. But I think most of us, I know I am, excited to see Deshaun Watson play in 13 days for the first time. It's good. Excuse me. It's going to be hostile in Houston, but they're a bad team, and the Browns should take care of business, and they got to get used to that. I mean, this team's going to have to get used to playing in front of a hostile crowd because everywhere they go, they're going to be booed. Everybody hates the Browns. Everybody wants them to lose. That's just the way it is. You can whine about it or you can do something about it. That's it. All right, I'll give you a couple more thoughts on the other NFL games and look ahead to tonight's Monday night game and some thoughts on the Cavs. I was going to do a little on the Buckeyes in Michigan, but probably get to that. I will say real quick that, obviously Ohio State did not play their best game against Maryland. They've been a little spotty in the last few games, but the bottom line is all you got to do is win. That's it. This style points thing is stupid, and in Ohio State's case, it doesn't matter. If they beat Michigan at home, where they're a 7-point favorite, and take care of business in the Big Ten championship game, which I assume they would do if they beat Michigan, then they're in the playoff. That's simple. And none of the, Michigan didn't play well, Tennessee, Georgia, TCU, none of these teams played well this weekend. So who knows? All right, I'll talk more about Ohio State, Michigan this week. But when I come back, again, rest of the NFL and a little on the Cavs. Coming up right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull. Okay, so a couple other things from the NFL this week. Falcons, kudos to them. I mean, they're in a bad division. They're 5-6. They had a nice comeback win against the Bears. That game went back and forth. Justin Fields got hurt late in that game. Hopefully he's all right. He's been kudos to him. He looked lost for his first year and change, and I think he's 5th in the NFL in rushing as a quarterback. Pretty impressive. Colts, Jeff Saturday almost got a second straight win. This one would have been impressive if he'd beaten the Eagles, but the Eagles score at the end of the game to defeat Indianapolis 17-16, the late touchdown to win it. It was 13-3, Colts going to the fourth quarter, and the Eagles came back. Awful game between the Jets and Patriots. Patriots win, sweep the season series, move into a tie with the Jets. 10-3 the final. Patriots win it on a punt return in the final minute of the game. I mean, this game was setback football many years. Awful performance by both quarterbacks. They both stink. Couldn't get. I know Mac Jones had a good completion percentage. I don't care. He stinks, and Zach Wilson's a million times worse. He's terrible. Takes no blame at the end of the game. That was embarrassing. Saints beat the Rams in a battle of also-rans. Also-rans, a 27-20. Andy Dalton threw 3 touchdowns in that one and completed over 80% of his passes. How about the Rams? I mean, are they the worst defending Super Bowl champ ever? They're 3-7. What a disaster. Lions, great win. I thought the spread was too little in this. I like the Giants. I was completely wrong. Dominant performance by the Lions, 31-18. Final score in that one, despite 340 yards from Daniel Jones. Commanders beat the Texans. Texans stink. Commanders were up 20-0 at halftime. Cruised to a victory there. Looks like Tyler Heineke is going to stay as the starting quarterback even when Carson Wentz is back. Raiders got their third win of the year, beating the Broncos in overtime 22-16. Those are two bad football teams, both at 3-7. The Sunday nighter was great. Chiefs score 14 in the final quarter after the Chargers had taken the lead with a minute and a half to go, and they're cheering when you know Mahomes is just going to come back. He did. They won. And finally, what a statement. I love to bag on the Cowboys, but my God, what a performance they had. The 8-1 Vikings were at home. The Cowboys were a slight favorite. A lot of people were asking the question, why are the Cowboys favored? They just lost to the Packers. They're on the road. The Vikings are 8-1. A lot of people thought the Vikings were a fraud. I wasn't buying into them at 8-1. Cowboys not only won, but just humiliated them. 40-3 was the final. Tony Pollard, who at this point is way better than Ezekiel Elliott, led the Cowboys in rushing, 15 for 80, and receiving, 6 for 109, 2 touchdowns, including one that was like 70 yards. Great performance. Monday Night Football tonight, 49ers and Cardinals. Cardinals, if they want any hope of making the play, and I've really been paying attention to the AFC. I haven't really been looking at the NFC playoff picture as much. But if Arizona has any hopes of making the playoffs, they need to win tonight, and it would be big because, you got the Seahawks and Niners. Seahawks are 6-4, Niners are 5-4. Cardinals win at 5-6. They're in the mix. They lose 4-7. They're pretty much done. Niners have won 2 in a row. Actually, have the third best point differential in the NFC at plus 35. There's only 4 teams in the NFC with a point differential better than plus 3. Right now, the NFC playoff picture: Eagles, Vikings, Cowboys, Giants, the division leaders, and they'd be in. What is this? No, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Playoff picture. Here we go. Top 4 seeds would be Philly, Minnesota, Seattle, and Tampa. Those would be your division leaders, division winners, and they'd be in that order. Buccaneers lead the NFC South at 5-5. And then you 3 wildcard teams right now would be the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Niners. How about the NFC East, man? I mean, I think the Giants are a bit of a fraud, but Eagles 9-1, Cowboys 7-3, Giants 7-3, and Commanders 6-5. All teams over 500 in the NFC East and the AFC East. I don't think anybody had that. Then the Falcons at 5-6, and then hanging on by a thread, the Lions and Cardinals at 4-6. Packers are done. They were terrible. So. All right. Final thing on the Cavaliers. They go 2-0 over the weekend. Easy win last night, beating Miami, 113-87. Miami was without a lot of their players. It was a easy win. The Hornets game was interesting because the Cavs obviously blew a big lead in the fourth quarter. They were up by 12 points going in the fourth quarter and then had to tie it to go to overtime. In the overtime, though, they scored 27. The Cavs scored more points. Cavs scored 47 in the second half and then 27 in overtime. Scored more points in the 5-minute overtime than they did in the third or fourth quarter, and only 1 less point than they did in the first quarter. Wow, they went bonkers in that game in the fourth quarter. And Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland combined for 75 points, 12 assists, 5 rebounds, 21 and 18 for Mobley, 20 and 12 for Allen. Their big 4 all had monster games there, and they all shot well. Allen, Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley on Friday night combined to go 44 for 73 from the field. 44. They took 73 of the team's 92 shots. So there you go. All right, I'll talk to you Tuesday. Where else but right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull. See ya.